Titus sir said, you just have to keep dreaming, and the dreams are something which have to keep you up, and you just never throw the towel in. Sam sir said that don't make your goals too rigid. Sometimes we have these preset paths which when we don't achieve, we become disappointed. But stay flexible and set sub goals, intermediate goals for goals. And Abhi sir said, uh, career is not the center of our lives. There should be other support mechanisms and other things which sort of make us holistically successful as a human being, which is very important to keep persevering in life. Now I have a very interesting question, which is for Roshan ma'am. As a civil servant, now I think this is a question that probably even I have had as a young person, that there are many young people in our country who aspire to civil services, would like to become civil servants. But the foremost question they have is corruption is a fact of our system. Uh, so is it possible to be an upright officer in the IAS? Like how how do you deal with that eventuality? Because there are a lot of people who think that it's all corruption. So let me rather not get my hands dirty. Let me not get into it. So what would your answer be to that question, ma'am?
Richie, answer would be this entirely possible. Like I said, first of all, it is in one's own selfish interest to stay away from such things, because to keep your conscience unburdened so that you get a good night's rest every night of your career. The other thing is, as a Christian in the service, so, what I value, see, our faith teaches us to value the right, what to value. And when your values are right, then naturally you set your priorities right. In my case, what I value most is my hotline with God. So that is something, a clouded conscience kind of disrupts the hotline, and there is atmospherics. So for me, it is a matter of my sheer survival that I keep my conscience clear and uncluttered. And that sense of that moral core at the heart of every individual, we can call it the voice of God, or maybe it is the real you, it is the real us, that moral core, that sense of right and wrong. So the idea is to keep that intact, to not to negotiate too much with it. And from my experience of working, like I said, close to 2 decades in this, I can say that yes, it is possible. For the I have never lost one night's sleep on account of a compromised conscience. Yes, I've lost several nights sleep because of work undone or work half done, but I've not lost a night's sleep on account of any moral dilemma. And I can safely say that I'm still the same person as I was the day before I joined service. So yes, if our goal is set right, and if our eyes are where they ought to be, like I said, on the real thrill that matters, the thrill being that you're able to fill a gap in somebody's life, then yes, it is possible.
Ma'am, I'm going to badger you a bit more on that question.
Sure.
Like practically speaking, practically speaking, in a political system like the one we have, are there any practical pointers that you would have as to how you can stay clean in such a system as a civil servant, or think of that as a young person?
We talk a lot about the politics and bureaucracy, but if you ask me, if, like I said, it's entirely in your hands. There is nothing pushing you. There is nobody pressurizing you in that extent, and nobody can pressurize you if you are very clear that you obey your own conscience. So unless you are attached to your chair, you are attached to the position you hold, or you have certain office in mind which you want to hold, or if something attracts you, then you are yourself answerable to it. But if you are decided that there is a limit of legality within which you stay, then at least from my experience, I can say that nobody pushes you to go beyond it. If you feel pushed, it's more often than not that it is because there is a clouded priority.
So keeping our priorities straight.
Correct.
And if we have our priorities straight, then there is nobody who can pressure us into doing something.
Politicians, because a normal question, they are very sharp people, because they have their, literally the finger on the pulse. So they know how far an officer will go and, what she will not do. So over course of time, they also study you and they understand you. So they never have expectations from you, of what, you can't do, because they also understand people.
So expectation setting right from the get-go.
Yes,
about
you set the expectations right. Yes.
Amazing. I hope that's helpful for a lot of you who had upvoted that question on the website. So now we come to the question of the I think the question of the year and probably the question of the decade. You guys must have guessed it right. It's a COVID-19 question. Uh, all of us have been affected by COVID-19. Everything. I mean, so many of the plans we may have made for ourselves, so many of the paths we may have built for ourselves, some suddenly seems disrupted. Um, Really, I mean, what do young people do to maintain their competitive edge in a competitive world, but at the same time, sort of achieve their goals, keep persevering in things like that? So, especially in COVID-19 times, is there some advice that you would like to give to people uh, to keep excelling even when there seems to be a lot of disruption around? I'm going to throw that at Dheeraj first. Dheeraj, any advice you have on this? Any pointers?
I would just suggest that you have to keep doing what you're doing, and you have to be a little flexible. I mean, if there's one thing that I've learned through COVID-19 is that, things have changed, people have changed to a large extent, expectations have changed. So you have to be flexible, and at the same time, you have to not compromise on your principles. That's very important. I mean, there was a recent case where, someone had sought some advice from us, and it was about a particular employee joining, arrival, and there was certain clause in the contract which said that you can't do that. And this particular company which had sought this advice was willing to spend and go and fight it out in the court of law. And obviously, something like that can't be done because the Indian Contract Act says that you can't have a restrictive covenant so as to say in your contract which to bar somebody from taking up employment. So keeping your principles is very important, because the truthful advice is that you can't do that. The false advice would be to say yes, you can do it, you will gain monetarily, because you would possibly get to file another case, you will have a whole succession of things that you will do. So to persevere in what you're doing, to be flexible, because you have to acquire new skills. And the last thing is to keep an eye on, there are a lot of courses that which were earlier very expensive to all the students, now which are opening up and which are free, which are online. Keep an eye out, try and get new skills. You have to acquire new skills. This is a good time to acquire those skills which was earlier not accessible because of either having to go physically in another country or because of cost. So keep an eye out so that you can have that extra edge.
Before I throw that question to quickly to Titus sir, and then at Sam sir, very quickly, I would just like to inform our participants that Dr. Murli has sent his apologies. He actually stays, as I had introduced him, he stays in a remote place where his connection is not that great. One of you had a question directly for Dr. Murli that what are some of his challenges. I think this is one of the major challenges in a technological time that he faces even today, of the choice he made. But we would surely love to answer that question someday later for you guys. We would like to get back to you. So apologies from Dr. Murli's side. Titus sir, let me throw that question. COVID-19, how do we stay resilient?
You see, I think, this was beyond our control, and I think nobody has any idea as to how many more days we got to be in this kind of a condition. But if you look at it, I think if you can just be patient, and if you can just persevere with reference to holding on and not panicking, and, I can see a lot of kids getting depressed just because they couldn't go ahead with certain plans that they had. We haven't lost anything. As long as you've been safe, you're healthy, I don't think you have lost anything. If you look at it, I did a small exercise in my office just to deal with this panic hit. You calculate the number of days you've been in lockdown, say 4 months now, and the number of days that you've been on this planet Earth. It's a small, minuscule percentage that you've been in lockdown. Take it easy. Everything is there. So go back. Whenever you go back with vigor. And I agree with what Dheeraj said. This is the best time to skill yourself, best time to learn a few tricks of the trade, upskill yourself, and you're ready, good to go. Don't panic. Everything is still there. Nothing has gone anywhere. So the panic is what is creating more problem.
Yeah. So putting things into perspective, I love that example of compare the number of days you've been in lockdown to the number of days you've been on planet Earth. Just putting things into perspective, right? And like Dheeraj said, use opportunities to learn, stay flexible. There are a lot of opportunities out there to keep learning. Sam sir, very quickly, how would you say we stay resilient in COVID-19 times?
In my opinion, it is actually an opportunity to think back ourselves, especially with respect to our current society. The priorities that we are giving so far, is it in the right direction? As far as I am concerned, because I am now mostly doing teaching profession as well as research job, my efficiency has gone up like anything. I need not have to travel to the office and come back. All the jobs are being carried out through Zoom platform, and the wear and tear is decreased, and some household work also I can parallel do. Overall, at least the efficiency has doubled. That is my opinion. But when we think about some hardware job, when people have to come together physically, definitely that sector will be affected. So my advice is take the benefit of the current lockdown situation and make it as an advantage for our future, as a stepping stone. And the society also can, after the, I think after the post-COVID situation, there will be a lot of change in the government policy itself. We can reduce a lot of unnecessary travel. We can do all the conferences, international seminar, everything through these such platforms. Reduce the pollution to the atmosphere. So a lot of benefits we'll get after this post-COVID era. So see it in the right perspective and get the advantage of that. That's my advice.
Yeah, so just hang in there. You know, things will change, and if we stay competitive, not competitive, if we stay sort of sharp, and if we keep sharpening our edge, and if we keep learning, there are great times ahead. There is potential ahead for a post-COVID world. That was what Dr. Sam said. Abhi sir, I'm going to throw one question at you, which has just come to me from a participant. I'm not sure where this who it is, but you talked about passion, right? Following your passion and understanding your passion. But how do we see in India, like when Indian cricket team plays an international match, almost every person in India becomes a cricket expert or will become a commentator. In the same way, in our lives also, everyone has a say. Parents have a say, neighboring uncle has a say. Everyone sort of, there are so many voices around. So sometimes, especially when there is pressure from home, and suppose we have a passion, how can we follow our passion without giving into pressure? And how do we actually deal with that dynamic?
I basically, especially with parents, you should have a very healthy discussion, because they are the closest around you who's thinking the best for you, right? And if you are contrary in terms of your thoughts with what they are telling you and what you have in your hearts, you should have a very healthy discussion, explain it to them. Many times what happens is parents think kids don't know what they are saying, and most of the times the advice is coming from that angle. The moment you are able to explain your passion, how are you planning to pursue it? Where do you want to go? And if you give a constructive framework to your answer and your thought process, I believe most parents will start aligning and start taking him seriously. To all the other comments, very creatively, God has given us 2 years. Whatever needs to be stored, take it from 1 year, take it to your heart, else it needs to go out from the other ear. You need to take advice from people once concluding what you like. For example, like I said, I liked numbers. Once I like numbers, I'm asking people, hey, what are my options in numbers? I am not going, other than my parents, I'm not going and asking people, can you tell me what I should do in life? Obviously, you're inviting a lot of thoughts into that, right? And that's exactly, you will get a lot of things coming in. So don't overexpose yourself to data and content which is beyond your limit. Be very sure, like I said, even in 10th class, even in your 12th grade, there is something inside of you. Always start with yourself that you like. there is a kind of a liking. I know it might not be for a long term, but there is a spark somewhere. Try to make a plan out of it. Discuss it with your parents. Try to convince them. And like I said, they are the best people around you because they want your good. They want the best out of you. Hence, they will listen.
So open and clear communication and dialogue being the key. And also, I mean, basically trying to do some research on our passion, right? Not just putting it out there that this is what I want to do, but just trying to study it. And
and the moment they say, how do you want to do it? We have no answer. So, be prepared. Even when you're going to parents, be prepared. They'll be impressed. Like I told you, they love you the most. And they're coming from that mindset, hey, my child needs help. And the moment they realize my child has already done a level of research, they are more convinced, they are more confident about it.
All right. So, obviously, about half the people who are attending this summit are women. So, I have a women-centric question next to the only woman on our panel, Roshan ma'am. As a woman, and why I ask this question is not because we think anything is different, but we obviously still live in a society and culture where there are obvious challenges for a woman in professions. So as a woman personally, as a professional, how have you managed to handle two things? One is your work-life integration and balance in terms of family relationships, being your family and your work, and secondly, have there been challenges of being a woman in your profession, and how have you tackled that, Roshan?
Richie, that's a very heavy question, and I think I'll have to bear the full burden of it by virtue of being the lone woman member. So, well, it's tough, and many times you feel as though your heart is caught in that medieval torture machine, pulling it in different directions. So as primary caregiver in the family, you have your fond duty towards your children. At the same time, you don't want to do anything less than full justice to your professional calling. So some days you feel a complete failure on all fronts, and at other times you feel a certain sense of achievement. You feel rewarded both as a mother and as a career professional. Now, being how you become a career woman or how you continue to be one, a lot to do is with the society or the organization you are part of, the sector you are part of. But yes, if we are discussing equality of opportunity, then there is a lot to be desired in the best of nations and in very many organizations. Many times the balance is heavily tilted. Now, if you ask my personal experience, then I'll have to say that in my job or in the place I work in, I can never say that I've been unduly disadvantaged because of my gender, nor have I been unfairly advantaged. My opinion holds equal weight, and I have been judged for my decisions as much as any man. But then I also know the experience of some of my sisters, my mothers, who have had to bear the burden of a lot of prejudice and a lot of preconceptions. Some of my peers who could not grow to the height they could have grown. So, because some of these children are listening, like you said, half are girls. And to those little women, I'll just share one or two small things from my experience. One is that, just come to terms with the limits of your own self. Let us be comfortable with ourselves. Why I say that is many times we try to be a do-it-all, and we seek to do all we do the best. And you try to live up to that image of a Wonder Woman in others' eyes, But then what we need to do is to just accept ourselves, warts, moles, and all, Like we understand our capabilities and also lack of it, our strengths, but also our weaknesses, and the unique circumstances that we all come from. Having done that, we work and we push ourselves to the limit of our conscience, meaning thereby that we do the best that we can. And sometimes, that will be a little less than what others expect. And many times it will be surprisingly more than what they expect also. And second thing I will say is that I've seen some and worked with some amazing women. And I sure know why God took that extra time to create a woman. There is a certain, 4D depth of perception. And there is a certain ability to come at a problem from so many different angles. There is a generous dose of sensitivity along with good sense. And if you ask me, a woman is that element with the maximum tensile strength, which can take so much of stress and still not break. So these are all very potent tools at work. So just don't believe anybody who tells you that you don't matter, that your voice doesn't matter. Just, if you read the Bible, just listen back to Esther, and that for such a time as this, we are here. We are meant to, we matter, our voices matter, our choices matter. So we use our influence, and we also use whatever talents, whatever skill sets, whatever opportunities God puts into our lap. And I can tell you from experience that we pray to God for just a day's worth of grace, just one day's worth of grace, and He will give it. Just keep faith in Him and keep the faith, and you will not be found wanting.
Thanks, ma'am. That was an amazingly insightful answer. Thank you, ma'am, for that. Now, my next question has to be fielded to all five of you. So now we have precisely 10 minutes left in our panel discussion. So there are two quick questions I have. Both of them have to be 1 minute answers. And I am going to be a little impolite and cut you off after 1 minute now. So because we have to finish on time. So the next question very quickly is, so obviously all of you, most of you have mentioned that you are people of faith. You hold faith very closely to your heart. So has your faith shaped your career choices in any way, or your career decisions in any way? And at any point, have you found conflicts between your faith and what your career demands you to do? And if yes, then how have you resolved those conflicts? So I'm going to quickly throw that at Dr. Sam first. So,
yeah, as far as technological field is concerned, there is very little interference of faith and the practice that we are doing in the profession. But while in the technology, we have to do techno-managerial tasks also. So we have to do some administrative work also. In my career, I have been the head of a division which is responsible for the development of digital autopilot for all the launch vehicles. That time only I could do a meaningful administrative task. Then I found that the objective of my own conscience is having some conflict with the objective of my bosses. But I cannot violate the path directed by my inner self. So I have actually decided it is not a suitable profession for me. I cannot go against my inner conscience. Then if I am going along with my inner conscience, definitely the superiors will not like. That is why I had to switch over to academic research field, the first opportunity when I got to switch over from the ISRO to an academic institution. So faith will have some conflict with our profession, especially in administrative profession. That is my experience. Otherwise, doing research in technological field, absolutely no conflict with the faith that I have followed.
Thank you, sir. Abhi sir, how has your faith shaped your career choices? Any conflicts? How have you resolved conflicts, if any?
Faith has not led to my career choice. I'll be very frank about it. But it definitely is a very important factor for me how I carry myself in my current responsibilities. Conflict, every day there is a conflict. It's not that conflict comes after a month. And like Roshan ma'am says always, you need to be aware there is always a problem. And in your mind, you should be prepared for a response also. Right? So the conflict affects a person when you are ready to compromise. When you know that there are certain parameters which is which needs to be followed, which needs to be rigid in order to get a result. There are people around you who would understand those parameters and they will start respecting you. So the more you're tilted towards a compromise, the more they will tilt you more. So ensure that your foundations and your parameters while going through this process is well defined, and everybody understands the perspective that you come from.
I'll throw that question next at Titus sir. How has your faith shaped your decisions,
So,
choices.
Richie, especially to the Christian community, I think business is the last place that a Christian actually ideally can look up as a vocation. And I don't think they have got it wrong. But what I'm upset about is by doing so, we have kind of given up this entire spectrum, the entire domain to people who actually can have a free hand, in doing what they want to do the way they want to do. So yeah, so I think I took a call, a choice, and like Abby said, I got into business much before I had accepted Jesus as my personal savior. And after I accepted him as my personal savior, there have been many times that I have thought of quitting business, and I wanted to become a missionary. I wanted to, do something very spiritual. But thankfully, the church that I was part of, my pastor kept pushing me back and said, "You are the pastor to the marketplace. You are the pastor to the employees you have. You're the guy who can walk into a IBM boardroom and talk to the directors there. I can't go in there." So he kept motivating me and pushing me back again and again. So I thank God, and I strongly believe believers should be there in the marketplace and go about doing a great difference. How I wish if I could have been in Dr. Roshan Jacobs' seat and decide on what I want to do and what I don't want to do. With all due respect, ma'am. But I say I have the days of great victories, and then there are times when we do have struggles of our own. But we have some core principles, and I think I'm very thankful that we hold on to those principles, and we are fighting this battle. Some days we win, some days we lose, and I think that's the same with any vocation, by the way. If somebody here is about assuming that a minister does not have temptations and challenges and tests. A minister, when I say, I'm not talking about a political minister, I'm talking about a Christian minister. I think it's just the same for all of us. So we will have to take those calls on a daily basis. So that's it. So I think I'm happy where I am, and I think I would like to see more and more people coming out here and doing this thing.
Dheeraj, how has faith shaped your career choices, if it has in any way? And how do you handle conflicts, which obviously occur in the law field?
Yeah, so it's a challenge. When I first took up the legal profession, a lot of people, from church said that, "Oh, you are a very nice person, but now you're going to become a lawyer." So that got me thinking that, what has changed now that I've suddenly chosen law, that, I've become such a bad person, or, they obviously assume that a lawyer is only involved in lying. So that there is a popular perception, particularly in communities, in certain sectors, in certain, certain thinking patterns are there. So that is a challenge. But I think as a professional, the challenge is also to be truthful. And to be truthful before the court. And there have been cases where we've been before the division bench, and when I draft things, I like to say things. I don't like to hide things, because I think concealing a fact is not very great. And there was a particularly very interesting case. I don't want to get into the facts, where the division bench said that because you said this fact and you've not concealed it, therefore we are going to grant you the relief. Because in our court system, a lot of relief that courts grant is discretionary, right? It's not like writ petitions. It's a discretionary relief. The court can say, "Sorry, we don't want to grant, exercise this discretion." You go and file a suit. But that really got me thinking, And another case where I thought the client had told me the truth and I said everything, but the judge before whom, or the bench before whom I had appeared before that court before, and the judge was quite upset. He said, "You have concealed this, and if actually you have concealed it, I'm going to dismiss this with exemplary cause." I was very upset for the next 3 days, because that was never my intention to conceal it. Fortunately, it turned out that the client did not give me a very essential document. I placed it on record. We got a favorable order, and I apologized to the judge concerned that I'm sorry that I did not file this, because it was my responsibility to file it and not conceal this document, but I didn't know. And the judge just said it's okay. Another challenge is embellishments, right? I mean, sometimes when you go to a lawyer and there is a particular fact, you like to add a little more masala, and I mean, you like to add so much more facts which are not really true, to make it sound more more eventful. I think that is again a real challenge, right? I mean, to be truthful is a real challenge. And I was doing a recent case where I knew the opposite side is lying, and I was really livid, and it was a stage of cross-examination. And I just prayed that, this witness was very, very arrogant, and he just seemed like, oh, you ask me whatever you want. And I just prayed, and, he just went off track and he completely demolished his own case. I mean, so the challenge is, to not give in to that easy thing of, saying 5 things more and then let's see what the court decides. The challenge is to be truthful. The challenge is to not conceal, and God works in remarkable ways. That's been my experience.
Thanks, Dheeraj. Roshan ma'am, very quickly, this question I'm throwing last at you very quickly. How have you resolved conflicts between your faith and your profession?
Just to address Mr. Koshi's, sense of deprivation, let me say that I'm master of my decision in matters of corruption and personal integrity. But as far as government decisions go, collective decisions go, we are all just cogs in that big machine called government. Yeah. And as far as your question, Richie, yes, my faith does help in some things, in shaping. I cannot say that I chose the civil service for a Christian cause. No, it was not so. But it does shape my faith, every step of the way. One thing is that, like I said, Jesus teaches us to hold our office with certain grace and humility, and to wield authority with some empathy. So it's not just the big picture, each person matters. And second thing is, we notice that Jesus always gave answers. He just did not give just explanations. So there, walking the last mile with a person becomes a bureaucratic duty because it is a Christian calling. Connecting that last mile and not just pushing papers and files. So you go that extra mile to do something for a person because that is how Jesus was. And thirdly, it also helps me. That coping mechanism, which you did not ask me, my faith also gives me a big coping mechanism, to retain that sense of equanimity when you feel that the ground beneath your feet is slipping, when everything is happening too fast, when all is in a state of flux. How do you keep yourself centered? And so for me, prayer has, again, been a big tool, because prayer connects you to something which is beyond yourself. And the trick or the idea is not to take yourself too seriously, and to not for a moment think that the trappings of authority and of the travails of it also both belong only to your chair. They don't belong to you. We are not our service. We are not our chair. So having said that, you can retain a center of peace even in the eye of a storm. And so I will say that faith has helped me, in my work.
Thank you, ma'am. So finally, I'm going to ask each of you for a 10 to 15 second, 1 or 2 liner takeaway from all that you have said. If participants forget everything else, what would you like them to take away from all that you have said in 1 or 2 lines? A quick bite-sized takeaway. I'm going to throw that at Dr. Sam first. Just 1 or 2 lines, sir. What would you like them to take away?
In conclusion, I would like to say that set the goal according to your inner abilities, follow a flexible path, draw satisfaction from your inner self, then you will be a unique winner personality. All the best.
Thank you. Abhi sir.
Richie, I'll just repeat what I said in the beginning. Marry passion with purpose and add discipline to it. And you will see a lot of goals that you will achieve in life.
Thank you. Marry passion to purpose, add discipline to it. Dheeraj.
I think 2 quick things. One, don't despise the day of small beginnings. Whatever is your beginning, don't despise that day. Second, understand your role. Someone told me this when I joined a particular office, that don't try and be the Messi of your team. Understand your role, do whatever small role is assigned to you well. You don't need to be the best and the greatest guy. Others also have to play along with a particular player. Don't be the Messi of your team.
Don't be the Messi of your team all the time. Thank you. Titus sir.
Richie, I would say believe in your creator and believe in yourself. Chuck everything else and everybody else.
Thank you. Live with who you are. Believe in yourself, and sort of
believe in your creator too.
Yeah, and believe in your creator and who he has made you to be. Roshan ma'am, the final bite-sized takeaway from you.
To civil service aspirants, I'll say, if I could, then you too can. And to others, everybody else, I'll say, just trust in yourself, but more importantly, trust in God's design for your life and submit. And our end of the deal is just to put our best foot forward and walk. There will be many valleys, there will be many thorns, but that will not hold you back. with hard work and with a lot of perseverance, you can stretch yourself to fill that horizon that God has set for you. God bless.
God has set a huge horizon and design for each of us. With hard work, we can all grow to fill that horizon that God has set for us. Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, each one of you, so much for the participants' knowledge. All these people are extremely busy people, as you can understand. But they have so graciously taken time to spend time with us and give us these massively helpful insights. I'm sure we have so much to take away from the wealth of experience and talent that all the 6 of you have brought to the table today. Thank you so much, lady and gentlemen.